Hi, everyone. Welcome to our this week's series of parenting children with special needs in a new reality. Remember, we have shifted our plan to only do webinars on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but that's also so we can make sure that we have really great content, good speakers, especially as all the businesses and whatnot start to open up and people start getting back to life in some way, shape, or form. But it's definitely going to be a new reality. So today, what I wanted to do is, since the weather has been beautiful around Connecticut, is to talk to you a bit about, now that we made it through kind of the worser part of the winter and into the early spring, we're not seeing as much rain. What is it that you can be doing with your children outdoors to really capitalize on the concept of body activated learning and make sure that they're getting the things that their body needs to be successful and to continue to grow and develop over the summer? I know there's a lot of questions around my area about whether or not camps will be opening, what the social distancing precautions are going to be, how much they're going to cost if they do open. There's just a lot of unknowns. So I think as parents, you're going to continue to have to be at the forefront and being a leader and a guide for your child in terms of the activities that you'll be putting in their spaces and how you're going to be engaging them through the summer months. And as you start defining your own new reality. So if you have participated in previous webinars where you've heard me talk about the body activated learning framework, then you already know what it is. And maybe you have a little bit of a sense of some of the ideas that and concepts that I'm going to present to you today. If you haven't, I'm going to share my screen and just give you a quick refresher on what body activated learning and what the chart looks like. Okay, so when you're thinking about activating the body for learning, you've got three main things that you're going to want to incorporate into your movement activities. And the first one is, do I need something to give me energy to my body or restore me to a calm place so that I can optimize whatever my level of arousal is? Now, my sense is if you're outdoors, maybe it's a little bit less stressful unless your child has some tactile things and struggles to go in the grass or the beach or something like that. But if your child needs to go out and run around and start engaging in play activities, then what I'm going to say is you're probably going to need to go with energizing. And energizing, the main components of energizing is that you have speed and unpredictability of movement, and that you're actively engaging and connecting to the muscles in your body. And that could be through resistance, like pulling or pushing something, but you're definitely also simultaneously adding in a lot of direction changes and speed so that you can really activate the vestibular system that's going to help the child get alert and connected. The second phase is the activate phase. This is where you're going to add a few more skills for your child. So wherever your child is at developmentally, depending on how much coordination they have or balance they have, that's going to influence the types of activities that you might bring into their space to start building on that skill set. Because if the movement itself gets a little bit easier and the child begins to learn to use their vision to guide what their body is doing, then there's a lot of other things neurologically that fall in place after that to help a child be able to act and interact better with their environment. And then the last phase is regrouping. Now, if we're talking screen time, the regrouping might look like taking vision breaks, breathing, stretching because you've been sitting for a while. If you're outdoors, you really might be focused more on the breathing piece, or if it's too sunny or you need like a little dark spot because you just did a lot of hand-eye coordination or ball play or something like that, then the regrouping is going to look like reducing visual complexity and visual demands, as well as bringing in some sort of blowing activity. So what does that mean when we're trying to pick through all the different activities and set up maybe an obstacle course in our backyard to help get our children activated and connected, and also learning and getting their bodies working better in the process? So now I'm going to teach you how to get through Pinterest. Okay, so let me move in that direction. All right, so now the screen that you're seeing obviously is Facebook, but if we go to Pinterest, then you're going to see, if you type in anything, if you type in blowing games, if you type in outdoor games, you're going to get all these different choices. And again, the question is, what do I set up where I can get the most out of the activity and really help my child to become the best version of themselves, and really get their brain and body working together, get them regulated, and get them in a place so that they're going to continue to be in a place of physical and neurological growth throughout the summer, so that they go back into the school year much better prepared. And some things that I want you to think about is, if we are setting up an obstacle course or something fun in the backyard, you're going to want some key elements. And the first key element, when you think about the framework that I just showed you, is energizing. So if I'm going to look at, let's say, like a ring toss activity, or this balancing activity with the balls, these are very, very skill oriented. There's targeting, it requires focus and controlled body movements. It's really not that hard and fast and unpredictable piece that we're looking for. However, let me just say that I am very eager. Let's find it. However, if you had something like this, for example, then this is a lot more crashing and activating of your muscles, changing directions. Maybe you're falling down on the side, so you're getting that head tipping and turning. This is a fun way to get a lot of energy and connection to your body while still keeping some sort of cognitive goal. And the reason a cognitive goal is important when you're thinking about different activities is giving your brain and your body a visual point of focus, or a point of focus, so that they can try to be connected to what's going on. Some kids, if you categorize them as seekers, some kids are really just kind of running all over, and they seem to be seeking sensory input, but they're really on the non-planned plan. So if you can provide that intensity of input in a more controlled way, and like I said, usually that involves giving some sort of goal to whatever it is that you're doing, then you're going to help that movement be much more organized, because it will be a little bit more rhythmic and repetitive, but it will also give the child something to be oriented to as they're getting the intensity of the input that they need. Now, the other thing that I've found on the internet that I am super excited about, and I think I need to order one, is this amazing giant bubble ball. And the reason I'm so curious about it is, they say that you can fill it with water, which to me, I mean, look at all that fantastic input that can go over a child's body when you roll it. Or if you take the water out of it and you want to turn it into something that's a little bit more of a hand-eye coordination activity, then it goes from being more energizing oriented to being more activating. So it's very versatile. I even saw, like, if you have more than one of them, you can do like bop it kinds of activities. So like you try to hit each other, but it's so soft, again, that no one's going to get hurt in the process. So I am a very big fan of not spending millions of dollars on sensory tools, but I'm also a big fan of looking at things and seeing if there's more than one way that we can use it, so that we can get the most out of a particular piece of equipment. So I'm kind of excited about this one. I do not own it yet, but I've been looking at it, and maybe it'll come into my repertoire. Other things that you want to think about that may be more in that energizing category is anything that involves fast running. Like, let's say you hid 3 things around the yard and they have to run to 3 spots in the yard and try to grab them. Or you could have log rolling from one cone to the next. You could have spinning. This is where you can, put in some of those different body moves, maybe between 2 cones, and then have the child do running, spinning, jumping, whatever it is that, again, developmentally works for them, that isn't too skilled, but provides a high amount of energy and input into their body in the process. And then if I'm picking the phase 2, if I'm picking the activate part of this obstacle course, then yes, now this is where all these hand-eye coordination activities start to come in, where you can do game toss, you can use pool noodles and hitting balloons, trying to get them into a basket. these people laid out a slip and slide, and then they put some string so that you had to crawl under it. So any of these, you'll notice as you look at them, what are their properties? First, you have to have your vision guiding your body in space. So this in the activate section is more the get ready, get set, go activity. This also as you're moving through space, but there's a lot of coordination demands to it. If you're staying in your immediate space, it tends to be under the category of move, learn, connect. So let's say, these balloons, for example, if I were to stand in the middle of them and then punch in the different directions, I'm still staying pretty close to where my body is. I'm not having to move through space a whole lot to get the activity done. So you can play it different ways. You always want to build in some kind of coordination, hand-eye coordination activity, something that has maybe a little bit higher level of coordination. Like let's say, for example, if you laid a bunch of tubes on the ground, it's not in, I don't see it on my scrolling page right now. But if you laid, let's say, a bunch of hula hoops on the ground, for example, and you put one foot in them and went through them like you were going through a set of tires in like an army obstacle course, for example. So you can also, I saw someone had a really great idea for something that they just had in their household, which was a ladder. And they put the ladder outside and they had the child climb up and over and down towards the other side. That fits in more the skill category. It's coordination, slow and controlled movement, and more balance. So that is getting your vision to guide your body and putting in some activating, more skill-based types of activities that are going to train your body to work together. So other things you could do, I've seen like scooping, doing like water transfers where you scoop up water and then run to the other bucket and try to dump the water in. Water balloon tosses, anything like that that you can think of. All of those fall in the activate category. So if you type in outdoor games for kids on your Pinterest page, you're going to get probably mostly things that fall in the activate category. When you also need to think about, like I said, incorporating things that have energizing, that are going to have that speed and unpredictability, spinning, jumping, all that sort of thing, to really get those connections firing and increase the amount of input that the child's getting to their body before they move on to the part of the obstacle course that has more of the activating activities. And then don't forget that you don't want to just leave them hanging, especially if you do put in activities and exercises that are going to be a little more challenging for them. You want to make sure that you are building in the opportunities for the respiration as well. So this little boy up here, he is blowing a balloon. In this one, they did a straw with a cup on the table. This was really cute. If you have like a little baby swimming pool or something, you could put some duckies in there and do some blowing. The other thing that I think works well in this regrouping category is if you have a tunnel or something to go through. And that way, if the child needs a chance to kind of decrease their visual input, especially if doing hand-eye coordination things are challenging for them, then there's an opportunity in your obstacle course after you do things that require more ball skills to go through the tunnel. And if they want to take a pause and stop in there and recover before they move on, that's totally fine. But the whole point when you're thinking about these obstacle courses is you're mindfully choosing what are the elements that you want to have in there that are going to really optimize the information coming in from the senses and how you're training your child's body to really use that information for adaptive responses and skill. Now, when I do an occupational therapy treatment session and we're looking at it from a more sensory perspective, I'm actually always balancing between these three elements. So sometimes I'm building in multiple spots where the child can have some kind of vision break or like a breathing station or something like that into the game. Other times, the child is really needing tons and tons of energizing input to their bodies. So that's where I'm going to weigh more heavily and make sure that I have more than one station that provides for that opportunity with little short bursts of skill, and then maybe, a very like quick recovery at the end. As long as the child is in a place where they're approaching the activity in a more organized and goal directed way, so that I can shift them out of just seeking into being able to use their body for more skilled motor demands. So, as I think about, let me just stop and share, as I think about some of the things that I've seen parents do outside, pools, and filling the pools with maybe even pillows, like just those little blow up pools that you can buy in the summertime. You can fill them with pillows, or if you happen to have one that does have like a blow up bottom that's kind of padded. One of my little friends, their mom set up a fabulous obstacle course where he had spinning and then climbed up the ladder and then had to run and look, and his dad threw him a football, so added in a little bit of that vision and space piece. And then after he caught the football, he could run and crash into that little pool or water area that he had that had a blow up bottom, and get tons of deep pressure and input to his body. Now, one thing I'll say is, when your child does these activities, you're going to notice a lot of things. So for some kids, maybe when they're running, they're the kind of kid that starts tipping their head forward, and then looks a lot of very clumsy, and then starts losing their balance and they topple over. That child tends to be the child that doesn't have enough input to their gravity receptors in their vestibular system, meaning that as they get that forward momentum, their head just goes right with them and they can't pull it up against gravity to keep their balance. If that's your kid, then you need to make sure that you're adding in more head tipping. For example, like maybe you're doing bowling through the child's legs, or you're doing, over under ball passes where the child has to tip their head and pass the ball to you. These kinds of things are going to help activate your posture against gravity, help them activate their head against gravity, and help them so that when they go to do hopping, jumping, climbing, whatever later on, they have enough stimulation to those gravity receptors to make it more possible that they're going to be able to keep their balance and execute those skills in a more refined way without having so many trips and falls. If you happen to have the child that never looks where he's going, and maybe you put out some cones that he's supposed to be running around, and you notice half the cones get kicked over in the process, then you know that maybe in your obstacle course, you're going to want to add in more opportunities to focus on helping your child develop the ability to have their vision guide what their body's doing. And what I would say about that is, think about the speed of the targets that you're having your child hit when you're trying to build hand-eye coordination. Oh, excuse me, I have to cough again. Sorry about that. So what I mean by that is the difference between a balloon and a ball. A balloon moves very, very slowly through the air. That means the child has enough time to try to look for it and then try to hit it. Maybe they can use a paddle, maybe they can't. Maybe they need a string on the balloon so that it doesn't float away too far, because it's too hard for them to get it if it moves out of their immediate space. Whatever those adaptations are, you might start off by having a station where they have a balloon that they have to try to hit 10 times. They don't even have to alternate it. You could hang it from a string, and you try to get their vision to guide what their body is doing. When they get a little bit faster, maybe you add a paddle. Or maybe you add a wiffle ball, for example, and you tie a string around it. The larger the target, the easier it is for the child to hit. The smaller it gets, the harder it is. So think about why most little children do not play with tennis balls. They don't play with tennis balls other than just throwing them out to mom or dad, because it's too small for them to coordinate their hands and their eyes to be able to catch it efficiently. So think about the same thing when you're adapting targeting for children. You want to always start with larger targets to hit. Even if you have a small ball, you're going to want a large basket to throw it into. You want a large balloon to be able to hit before you progress to catching a smaller water balloon that you're going to bring outside with you. So these are all the ideas that I can give you in terms of helping facilitate the connection between the visual system and the rest of the body, so that the vision is guiding what the body is doing. And if you can space out the things that the child has to look for, like let's say they do have to go around the cones, but it's too hard for them to adjust quickly to weave in and out, maybe you want to space them further apart so that the child has a moment to really look in the distance to see the next cone to make the adjustment. Because if the cones are very close together, then what's going to happen is the child's going to start running, but they're not going to look down and they're not going to be monitoring what's directly below them. And this is actually very common, that children children who have trouble connecting their vision to their body will move in a straight line, and they will often keep their eyes right at midline, just like I'm doing right now, but they will not monitor overhead space to see what's coming above them. And they will not monitor the floor space to see what's below them to make the adjustments. Because when you think about the way our vision works, we look ahead and we see what's coming. We know that there's going to be a shift in the curb or a transition or something, and then we adjust our body. But if you didn't internalize that because you never visually oriented to those key elements in your environment, then the chances of you not seeing it, tripping, knocking over the cone, whatever it is, are pretty good. So build those visual skills and use that progression that we just talked about to help train the visual system and give the child time to adjust to different visual targets as they're moving through their obstacle course. And you can always play around with the elements that you include in the obstacle course to make sure that you're building the skill and it's not just something that becomes frustrating for the child. So, so to review, when we're thinking about that activate section and we want to get the vision to control what the body is doing, play with the size of the target, the distance of the target, the speed that the target is moving. Is it stable or is it moving really fast and I have to track it? And if you're actually moving your body through space and you have to go from one target to the next, like on the ground with a hula hoop, cones, things like that, play around with the distance and make sure the child has time to see the next obstacle that they have to navigate around. And then you can gradually put it closer and closer together, because the closer that the objects get, like the cones, for example, the quicker a child's body has to respond to navigate around it. Again, if you've ever been in soccer class, you know that initially the kids are really just running and trying to kick the ball. They're not really adding any degree of direction change or quality of movement. They're just trying to get that basic coordination of timing their run with making contact with the ball. So think about that development when you're making those choices. You don't want to, take out the activating things. You do want them to have skill, but you want to make sure that the body is prepped with energizing types of activities so that they're connected to their muscles, that they're alert, that they're up against gravity. Before they go into the skilled activities, and then make a plan for recovery on the backside, whether it's going through a tunnel, stopping at a bubble blowing station, doing one of the other blowing games I showed you on Pinterest, or running and crashing into a pool that's filled, with pillows or something like that. Okay. The other little key information I want to give you about building the vestibular system, because that is really kind of the keystone that pulls all those senses together. It really directs your eye movements. It communicates with your muscles to tell you what kind of balance and adaptive response that you should have. And it helps you to localize sound and space so that you can orient to where people are around you in the social activity from an auditory perspective. So if there's one system that you really need to be working well for you, it's that vestibular system and that connection of the vestibular system to the other senses. The way that you deal with kids who have trouble in space and they have really poor spatial judgment is you're going to want to make sure that in your obstacle courses, you build in a lot of head tipping and turning. And so that may be that you're adding in spinning, or that you're picking up balls from one side and then throwing them somewhere else and shifting your attention that way. If you can build in even like grabbing your child's hands and running in a circle, like when you hold hands in gym class or something and everybody goes to the right and then they go to the left. All of those direction changes are building in that sense of space for the child. And then you can translate that sense of space to the activate activities where now they're playing, jumping different distances, using the cone idea that we talked about, things like that. So just make sure that whatever the kinds of issues are that you're seeing with a child, that you're trying to match and choose more mindfully the types of things that you want to put in your activity. What kind of energy does your child need? Do they need to be up against gravity? Do they need to build their space awareness because they're always bumping into people? Are they big crashers and they need a lot more intense muscle input? So we need to do things that are kind of strong and fast at the same time. And then how can we take that input, train their bodies to work more effectively so that they can do more skilled motor activities, really develop their vision guiding their body, build on their coordination, build on the level of ability to kind of quickly adapt and adjust their body to the demand, and then make sure that we have that recovery space. If you do that when you're planning your backyard games, you are going to be doing so much for your child to really activate all the senses for learning, to improve their focus and attention, and to make sure that their body is working for them rather than against them. And all of those pathways are the pathways that we need to be working well so that you can sit at a desk and get your work done, so that you can sit at your desk and stabilize your visual field for reading, so that you can increase your heart rate, get all that blood pumping, make sure that you get all those boost your serotonin levels, and you have all of these happy hormones that make you feel good and positive about what you're doing. As you build your child's physical skills, it's also going to help them improve their social connection. I have a teenager who struggled to make the transition to middle school because of that exact fact. People, the social connection was just tossing a ball around, and the child could not really participate in that activity. Even though he was a big talker, everybody else was moving and hanging out while they were talking, and he just couldn't connect. So he sat in front of his computer, and it was a big problem. And for him, learning these physical foundations made such a huge difference in his ability to access his peers so that they could do more physical things together that didn't necessarily involve technology and screen time. And so I want you to keep that in mind is, as the weather gets so much warmer and we have these opportunities to fill in some of these foundational sensory and motor gaps that may be holding our child back socially, from an attentional perspective, or even from just like a participation and willingness to stay physically active and healthy. Because we know that children who have struggled with the foundations of coordination, as they get older, they start opting out of a lot more things because they're just not as physically adept as their peers. So they don't want to do sports. They don't want to participate in things where the other kids are always better than them and they're always worried about getting bumped or knocked over. So the value of all those team sports doesn't really have the same value with them because it's a perpetually frustrating experience. So I just want you to think about those things and think about how important it is to really, not just try to catch up on your reading and your math work and whatnot through the summer, but be mindful about the kinds of activities that you're putting in your child's space that's really going to set the foundation for helping them over the long run in being happy and successful and being able to access the environment and their peers in a way that makes them feel good and makes them feel empowered. So that is my presentation for the day. I hope you enjoyed it. What I want to do is let you know what's coming up for the rest of the week. We have Dr. Delisa back, and she is going to be talking with us about IEPs because she feels strongly that there's a lot of families that really just don't know how to read their IEPs as they're trying to collect this data, and they need to understand some of the key words and phrases that they should be looking for. the way that the goals are written, what they're looking for in terms of how goals are written, so that they can be more educated going into the PPT meeting and advocating for their child going forward. And then on Friday, I'm excited because Felice Marcy is going to be with us. She is a personal trainer and a life coach, and she also has children. So she's going to be talking with us about our self-limiting beliefs, how we process and recognize our emotions, and maybe some of our unwritten rules in our manual for life, and how maybe that can be holding you back in what you want for yourself and what you want for your child. The other thing I wanted to say before we leave is that I am launching my Meltdowns to Motivated membership course for parents who have children who are struggling with distance learning, but who also, really need to fill in the foundation like we talked about today to build those life skills. And I want to guide you as a parent through this process in creating your new reality. So I will be posting more in the Facebook group on that. I'm opening it up for a lower price to founding members who want to participate and who want to weigh in on the types of content that you want to see in the membership. But even as you weigh in on that, I'm still going to be guiding you through the stages and the steps to become an empowered parent and to help your child also grow from having self-doubt and self-limiting beliefs and frustration to becoming more sensational. So watch out for that, and I will see everyone on Wednesday. Thanks.